I'm Ron Sasso. I'm a licensed counselor. I also facilitate the newly diagnosed support group, which is virtual. Uh, and I will answer questions at the end of this session. So if you have some, hold them if you can. And one of the things that, to me, very, very important, because no one really chooses scleroderma. Nobody chooses the road that we're currently on. And as much as we'd love to have the ability to make all our choices, we don't get that opportunity, but we get to choose how we react to our situations and how we move forward. We always have some level of choice. And is everybody freaked out by statistics? I mean, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people, I know when I was first diagnosed 7.5 years ago, it was overwhelming because I was told, 50% chance might not make it 5 years. And with that, basically, statistically, with some of the statistics on how long, one of the statistics, how long a male's lifespan is shortened, 26 years on average. And I've actually been dead for quite some time now, statistically. So, and I just ran a half marathon last week. So for a dead guy, I'm doing okay. So part of this is you need to keep in mind with statistics that you get to make a decision whether or not those statistics apply to you. Because yes, on the one hand, they can be scary. A lot of them are based on old research. They can be wildly inaccurate. There are a lot of people who may never seek treatment that are out there, and they don't seek treatment because they're doing okay. So there's a subset of people potentially that are being missed. The statistics sometimes can lead you to assume the worst is going to happen. And no single statistic that's out there takes into account who you are and what makes you unique. And that's important, because you get to decide that the statistics do not and will not apply to you because you are different. And important to keep in mind, mortality rates, life has a 100% mortality rate. So it really doesn't matter. We can look at all the other statistics. None of us get out of here alive in the long run, but it's what you make of what you've got. The word of the day today is heterogeneous. And basically that means diverse in character or content. And scleroderma is different. It is different in everybody. As much as there are similarities, we're still all different. And that's one of the things that makes it hard to diagnose, because it is very different. Sometimes people might not have Raynaud's. Even though most people do, but there are always anomalies. And, looking at different types of scleroderma it's good for you to know what type of scleroderma you have. So there's localized, there's systemic, and under the localized, there's morphia, linear, and under systemic, there's limited and diffuse. And those basically refer to the amount of skin involvement. Now, I added a very small box in there that says CNA, because even though, and you should know ideally your antibodies that you have, and I'm SCL70 positive. which also accounts for more of the diffuse skin involvement, but I don't have much skin involvement and I'm considered CNA. So as far as all the anomalies that are out there. So getting started on the road, one of the most important things, get a rheumatologist who is a scleroderma specialist. And that's when you can go to the National Scleroderma Foundation website and you can see who's out there. Get important labs, baseline testing done. So like, for instance, pulmonary function test, echocardiogram. You want to monitor your blood pressure. And there again, depending on what, what antibodies you have, the important thing with those is that you may know what you are at greater risk for. And with monitoring blood pressure, you don't want to see a 20-point change in your blood pressure. Possibly you might need a high-resolution CT scan of your lungs. And that basically is to get a baseline. Another thing that's important is to get organized. If you're early in this process, get organized, get a binder, and start putting all your medical records in it. Put them into sections. It is boring. It's not very exciting to do, but at the same time, when you go to medical appointments, and particularly if you get to see a scleroderma specialist, you can bring that binder and they may say, hey, what are your past labs look like? And they can pull that up and take a look at it because you've got your binder with you. And that's one of the things that, for my own experience, I did that was very helpful. Anytime you're, and there again, because you're dealing with so many different aspects of medical, being able to go back and look and see, well, was there really a change? You can look back at your records. Another thing to do is also journal how you feel. On any given day, you may have new symptoms, something might change. Write about it. Write a little bit and put the time, the date in. What else happened? Was there anything else going on at that time where you were feeling something different? So it's a good thing to do. And there again, even journaling just how you feel. There's a healthy aspect of being able to write out how you feel. Now, one of the things for anybody who's been newly diagnosed, there are going to be a lot of people out there who may not know anything about scleroderma, but they will tell you that they have something that can help you, that can cure you. And there are a lot of people out there. Unfortunately, there are some people out on the internet that will say, oh, this is the answer to this. My personal favorite, I had somebody, a person approach me trying to sell me on the idea of cryotherapy because it cures so many things. And I explained, I said, cryotherapy. So you're talking about putting me in really cold, like lots of cold. Oh, yeah, it's great for you. Yeah, I have Raynaud. It's going to cause permanent damage. Sorry, no thank you. So keep that in mind, that there are going to be people out there. Some will mean well. Others will be looking at trying to make a profit. So keep that in mind. Things that are important to keep in mind too with scleroderma, there's no cure yet. I hope that we all get to see a day when there is a cure, but until then there isn't. It's chronic, it's going to be with you for the long haul. Symptoms could end up going into remission, they can diminish, they can come back, but it does not mean that you're cured if they diminish, or they seem to go away. typically you still have that. Even with, one of the things to keep in mind is even with stem cell transplants, that sometimes when people go through stem cell, the antibodies are still in your system, and so sometimes, though it can help restart the system, it's still, in some instances, scleroderma can come back. But you want to pay attention to any changes in your body and see a doctor if you have changes. Now, being newly diagnosed, you're going to be dealing with a lot. And awareness of what you're dealing with takes a lot of time. And so you may feel very overwhelmed, or as the cat there at least feels up to its knees. And you have to give yourself some time to process. It's a lot of information. And sometimes a lot of times people will consult Dr. Google, or you go to the internet chat rooms and other health sites. And, one of the things I always think about, people who are constantly on the internet and in those chat rooms, are they really healthy if they're spending all their time there? Chances are they're not. A lot of times people just mean well, and that's one of their outlets, but keep that in mind. It can be a good place to learn more about specific, issues or ask questions. But there again, you have to keep in mind that you're not getting an answer from a medical professional. You're getting it from another patient. And that can be overwhelming. One of the things that, if you start feeling overwhelmed, chances are you should have gotten out of the chat room or stopped Googling and searching about 15 minutes earlier. So Inspire is excellent, but again, with everything, you need to limit how much you do. And when I say that, as far as limiting how much you research and how much you dive in, for me, as a licensed counselor who was diagnosed, I felt I was walking a fine line between gathering information and being in a mild form of denial. I was aware of what I had and I'd research, but I didn't want to fully absorb it because it's a lot to wrap your head around. And so I would research. As soon as I'd start feeling a little stressed, stop, take a break, go back to it when you feel fine, you're at peace. Okay, you go back, because the one thing that you don't want to do, and I'll get more into this again, you don't want to cause yourself more stress. Stress is bad. So some people may feel that they feel like they've got cognitive concerns, having been newly diagnosed, and thinking, I seem to be forgetting things or what have you. Well, when it comes to memory, the first step in that is attention. You start looking at attention and concentration. If you have other things on your mind, your attention is not going to be as good. So this is important to understand. And so when you're not focusing on what's happening in the moment, because you've got so many things you're running through your head, what ifs and what have you, you are not going to retain information, which means you're going to be forgetting things, and you're going to start thinking, oh, is this affecting my brain? Well, no, it's not. It's just that you're probably depressed, which also doesn't help when it comes to memory function and cognitive issues. Anxiety does not help. And fatigue definitely also plays a role. If you are fatigued and you're trying to recall information and trying to function at a high level cognitively, it's going to be harder. So when you say you have to pay bills or whatever it may be, choose a time when you are at your best. If it's early in the morning, whatever it is, utilize that. And scleroderma very, very, very rarely has a direct impact on cognitive function. Usually only if there is, linear, like the SABRE type skin involvement that goes into the skull. And that itself is very rare that happens. The impact it has is indirect. So some thoughts on Raynaud's, because most of us are going to deal with that. You want to, whenever possible, avoid the cold. If you live in Florida, it might seem easier, but then you're dealing with air conditioning. So nothing is as simple as it seems. And anybody who's walked into the lobby knows that is a problem. So, but when possible, avoid the cold. If it's not possible, prepare for the cold. Keep spare gloves, hand warmers, toe warmers, and there are also rechargeable hand warmers that you can get that basically they're electric, battery powered. They also can charge your phone, but I think you can get them on Amazon, and they, maybe $25 or $30, and you can use them as often. I have them, and I find them very helpful. And also, I've learned that even the chemical hand warmers that are disposable, somebody in one of the newly diagnosed support group pointed out that if you take one of those hand warmers, the disposable, and after you've just used it, say a couple hours, you put it in a Ziploc baggie, take all the air out of it, close it up, it will work again. And basically they're good for whatever, 10, 12 hours, something like that. You can potentially get 2, 3, maybe even 4 uses out of it. Usually for me, I'll stop at 3, just because I don't want to run the risk of having it die on me. But it saves a little money. Keep gloves near the refrigerator if your Raynaud's affects you that much. And this is one that I had to learn. Took me a little bit. I'm a slow learner sometimes, like just running out to the car for a second to grab something in winter. I'm just going out there just to grab something. No big deal. Be out there for a minute. Well, in 10-degree weather, yeah, and I'd come back in and be like, okay, no, this is not good. So you learn to prepare. And it's better to say that this is going to be too warm than this should be warm enough. You'd rather be on the other side of safe. Now, dealing with mental health issues, which is something that I think we all have to deal with, just because it's a lot to process. And when I say this, I'm saying this from the standpoint of any serious health diagnosis. And even within scleroderma, you can have multiple health diagnoses. So, you get diagnosed with scleroderma and then say potentially you get a diagnosis of ILD. Well, that's something new. I mean, yeah, it's part of the scleroderma, but that's one of the concerns, and that can create anxiety, depression as you're going through that and feel overwhelmed. So to me, I believe that mental health is very important in getting through a lot of that. So depression, very common. A recent study showed that higher level of education, or people who are married or in a marriage type situation have less depression than people who are unmarried. And so, but there again, everybody's situation is different. Keep that in mind. In my case, I was married at the time of my diagnosis. I am no longer married, and it's a great thing because, first thing my ex-wife said to me was, "You need more life insurance." So not the most supportive and caring, but these are things to keep in mind too. Usually you will find, if you've got a supportive family, you'll know. And you'll also deal with, if your family, there's some people that their families are not as supportive or don't understand it. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So, and that can be very difficult. So researchers observed lung involvement, breathing procedures and tender joints were linked to more symptoms of depression, but not necessarily to anxiety. But anxiety does present a significant concern for a lot of people. Obsessive compulsive disorder was seen in 15% of patients in one of the reviews. So if you feel the need to keep things very, very ordered, that could be part of that too. I firmly believe it's important to get connected with a support group where you can contact, you make contact with your chapter and see where support groups are. There are also online support groups if you're in the middle of nowhere, which a lot of people are, unfortunately. To me, that's one of the important things to understand, that you are not alone. You're not the only person dealing with this. It might feel like it, but you're not. And that's one of the great things with the conference, because you realize you're not here. You're not the only one here. And again, those support groups, find one, try to connect. It's also okay to take a break from things, choose not to talk about scleroderma for a little while. And ideally, you surround yourself with people who care and understand. Consider getting mental health counseling specifically. And, this is my cat here who, so it's okay to forget about scleroderma for a little while. Actually take a break, laugh, do whatever, anything else. Maybe even dream that Super Kitty will fly in to save the day. So, and actually she has been quite my support system. So, and furry and purry. But how do you go about finding a good counselor? And, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, I'd love to have somebody with scleroderma experience. Well, that's probably not going to happen. So first, you want to check with your insurance. If you've got insurance, see if they have specific covered therapists. Ask someone you know or trust who may have gone for counseling. Ideally, it's not somebody who's been for counseling for 30 years and they're still going and they haven't really made that much progress. So I would avoid somebody like that. Just saying. But use a reliable online database, American Psychological Association, American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Sometimes they will list counselors, and make sure that they're licensed. If you prefer a male or female, look in that, depending on whether or not you're more comfortable. That's one of the things you should look at too. And if you're in a rural area, particularly post-COVID, there are a lot more counselors that will do remote counseling. And the therapist should be licensed, and they should be in good standing with with the licensing board. A lot of times you can Google that with your state and see if they are in good standing. And if you do not have insurance, there are some counselors that may work on a sliding fee scale. And then also, if that's not an option, if you live in a town where they may have a college university that trains counselors, sometimes they may have graduate students that will be looking for patients, and you can potentially get free counseling that way. And keep in mind that they are being supervised. So even though they're not experienced, they should be being supervised while they're doing the counseling, and they've already gone through training for that. Make sure that your counselor has experience. And again, they're not going to have scleroderma experience, but experience in handling grief, dealing with health issues. And a lot of it, when you have a session with the counselor, ideally at the end of the session, you should feel that the counselor's listening to you. You should feel comfortable. If not, you want to look for another counselor, because most times that first session that a counselor will have, they're going to be trying to build rapport, understand what you're going through, what your needs are. They're trying to come up with a treatment plan. You might not see a lot of things happening that first session, but at the same time, you should feel comfortable. If you don't, then you probably don't have the right counselor for you. And don't feel bad about needing to change counselors. That happens every so often. Once in a while, there could be just where it's not a good fit. Now, as far as addressing scleroderma with family and friends, some people just get freaked out by the weird diagnosis. And you'll have some that'll be supportive, and some or many may think that you look fine, and therefore you really are okay. And then there's some that might say, "Oh, you're just being dramatic. You're fine. You're okay." And it's interesting because most people don't understand scleroderma. They just, it's foreign. And I last year I was diagnosed with cancer, colorectal cancer. And basically it was a very small, slow growing tumor, and it needed to be removed. And, and I shared that this had happened. And my first thought when I got the call saying I had cancer was, oh, that's not good. But then I thought, well, at least it's not scleroderma. I already have that. And, the interesting thing that I found was I had so much support from family and friends and with this cancer diagnosis. And yet with what I knew about it, I was like, it's going to be done in a small surgery in 2 months and it'll be gone, more than likely. That's how with what I knew, and I explained, it's real minimal. But people understood that more than scleroderma. And so the difference in just hearing that cancer, I mean, if we could rename scleroderma cancer or something, people would be, oh yeah, yep. They'd seem to understand more. But so part of that, you just have to deal with people not understanding. You can try and educate them, and they may get it, but sometimes people just, they won't, or that might scare them. And there again, if they start Googling it, then they might get freaked out. You don't know. And there again, that's not your problem. That's their problem. It may affect you, but you don't own that. You shouldn't own how they react to your diagnosis. Now, things that you should avoid, with scleroderma, smoking, drinking alcohol. And there again, I'm just saying these are things that recommended to avoid. Not cold weather, not that we can all avoid that. Eating late at night because of reflux. Rabid animals. And Walmart. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. The rabid animals in Walmart, those are just, just seeing if anybody's paying attention. But, Walmart is stressful. That's why I think Walmart. So, and which leads me to the stress being bad. So, stress is bad for you. You want to avoid it as much as possible because, yes, don't drive angry. Love that movie, sorry. But it affects the body, and it affects the body in more ways than we realize. So there are different types of stress. There's acute stress, which happens very quickly, and is short-lived, is more considered the fight or flight, where you get the cortisol and the quick reaction. And then there's also the chronic stress, the long-term stress. And one of the things with dealing with a chronic illness, you're going to be dealing with also chronic stress because it's not something that's just going to go away. So you almost have to learn to deal with that aspect. Become aware of your body. And this is something I preach quite a bit, that you need to listen to your body and pay attention to changes as they happen, because that's one of the things that, you know your body better than anyone else. Do not panic when something changes or feels different, because if you panic, basically what's going to happen is that will make it worse. So you don't want to do that. Sense your body as objectively as possible. So as you're feeling things, just, okay, well, yep. Even with the Raynaud's attack, your hands or fingers are changing colors. Try to be as objective as possible and say, okay, I need to warm up my hands. Don't start panicking because that's what's happened, because you're in a Raynaud's attack. Because that will make it worse. And being aware of changes, different situations can help you make adjustments, handle that stress better. And also, the more you learn, the more you can prepare for different situations. Has everybody heard the term mindfulness? I would figure, I still hate the term. It sounds so new agey to me that I never liked the term, but I've gotten used to it. I don't know what it is. It's just, but, what it isn't is it's not that, your brain is full and you can't handle anymore. But so mindfulness is basically being conscious and aware of something, being aware of yourself. And the big things are remaining calm and look at situations objectively. Don't get caught up in the emotion of or fear of the moment. Consider bodily changes as something happening, not just something happening to you. And I know this is easier said than done, but review different sensations as objectively as possible. And then there's getting yourself into relaxation techniques, meditation, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation, yoga, deep breathing. All those things are helpful. One of the things you should never do, though, don't do visualization, like where you close your eyes and you're imagining yourself on a beach. Don't do that while driving, just so you know. So, and yoga, even though I don't really do yoga, it is excellent for your body. I've had my cat try to get me into yoga, and that's her trying to show one of the wide angle seated pose, because she knows the importance of reducing stress. And she's a very unique cat. So deep breathing, and this is one of the things I really like because it can be done anywhere. And it gets more oxygen to your brain. It stimulates the autonomic nervous system, which lowers your blood pressure. And sigh breathing is also shown to be helpful in a recent study. And it's just what it sounds like, actual sighing. So it was interesting that that was studied recently, and they realized, oh, that's a thing. You know, when you think you get frustrated and you sigh, well, that's actually helping you. But you might not want to do that in a job interview or something of that sort. So, but, and so basically just breathing in through your nose as though you're smelling something for 2 seconds, pucker your lips, and like you're blowing out candles, and do that slowly 2 to 3 times, and just keep repeating that. And that will help with lowering your blood pressure too. Exercise when you can, as your doctor recommends. That speeds removal of stress hormones. And I'm a big believer in exercise. You know, and just so you know, my cat has lost a couple pounds since that previous picture, but consider tracking. You know, this is one that I like. You know, there are different fitness trackers. The more you sit, and here again, I know that like the conference is tough because we're doing a lot of sitting, but the more you sit, the worse it is for arthritis, the worse it is for your circulation. You know, when it comes to Raynaud's, that circulation is important. And if you happen to have myositis, your muscles will get sore and weak. And I know for me, I have to keep moving, and it helps. It helps with, there are times where I just feel very fatigued and want to nap. And instead, I will try to move and force myself to do that. And usually I feel better. Not always, but, and every so often, I absolutely need a nap. I napped earlier today, had to. Other preventative considerations with your hands being newly diagnosed. Look at hand exercises to prevent your fingers from curling. Get a referral to an occupational therapist, because that may be helpful as well. And they may have other exercises for you. And they can also give you mouth stretching exercises. Sometimes, because sometimes the mouth can become tighter. So keep that in mind, and that can make dental work more challenging. And there again, these are things that if you're newly diagnosed, you might be thinking, that's not on the radar right now, you're fine. But keep these things in mind, and preventing that from happening. If any changes happen, you want to prevent it, because it's harder to undo than it is to keep things going. One of the other things too that, and actually I don't have a slide, but I also recommend raising the head of your bed 6 to 8 inches. And that's for reflux. And you can go online and you can get little posts that go underneath your bed and just raise it. And it's actually not that awkward when you think about it, sleeping in it. It takes just a little bit to get used to, but not much at all. And most GI doctors say, yeah, propping yourself up with pillows is not the same as having your bed at an angle. So, and very important, do not take life too seriously. And this, like I said, none of us get out of here alive. You want to enjoy life as much as you can. And the more that you can laugh in general in life is better. We know that helps mood, that helps a lot of things. One thing that's out there that there's some research that indicates that ice cream seems to be healthier for people. At least there are some studies that indicate that ice cream is not unhealthy when they look at it. And most of the people doing the studies, they don't want to speak out on it because it makes no sense. How could something with fat and sugar and have these results? There's part of me where I think, is it possible that some of that could be the health aspect of it? That the mental health, that eating ice cream is just good for you, maybe. Of course, you might have to, like I do, I'll wear gloves while eating my ice cream. So, but don't take life too seriously. And travel light. Sometimes it's more about the journey than the destination. So, and then my personal motto, relax, pray, and keep moving. And this is kind of how I've done things is, and yeah, it's know that you will get through this. You will do well. Believe that. Believe in yourself. Believe what you can do. Be vigilant, and you will be okay. Believe it and be active. So anyway, thank you. And I'll take any questions that you might have. And she didn't explode. So. Okay, the question was, any tips for anybody who's had scleroderma for some time and helping with the chronic part? So, my tips on that, and I know it's hard when you're dealing with it on a long-term basis. At the same time, I know creating certain habits and routines to force yourself to be as active as possible. That's one of the things. Finding meaning and purpose in life. That is, I cannot emphasize that enough. That is one of the absolute most important things for any and all of us to do. And it may be that you become an advocate for the Scleroderma, National Scleroderma Foundation, or you set your goal of raising awareness for some person, or it might be, okay, I'm going to volunteer at animal shelter once a week, or a library, or what have you, looking for something that you can help me. Ideally, if you're helping others, you're going to feel better about yourself. But those are the things that I think when it comes to dealing with chronic day-to-day, you have to find a purpose. And sometimes it's almost like you have to fake it until you make it. And that's one of the things I guess I look at. There are days I don't want to do anything, and I force myself to do it. And I know most people look and say, "Oh, I look fine. I'm doing well." Well, every day I pace back and forth in my house, and I worry about getting down on the floor to do my push-ups because I remember what it felt like when scleroderma hit and I couldn't do push-ups because I felt like I was being stabbed in the shoulders. And so it's almost like a little PTSD, but I always do it. I get down there and I do it. And some days I'm just hearing all the cracking. Other days it's not so bad. So, yes. Excellent point. And it really wasn't a question as much as a comment, which was going through the grieving process. And it's actually, I just did a newly diagnosed support group on the grieving process. So, because that is, we are all dealing with some level of loss. And, you know, it can be on a very small scale. It can be on a bigger scale. For me, I look and I think, okay, well, I was married for a long time. That's gone. And, you know, had high level careers. Those are gone. But you find new purpose. You have to grieve those. And those are things that it's a process. It's not something where one day you just wake up and you say, yep, okay, I'm over that. No, it's a process. It's, you know, each day you have to, you deal with it, and you might try to do something, and one day you might feel good and you can do more, and next day you can't. And sometimes you have to adjust your goals and see, okay, well, what am I going to be able to do? What can I do today?
Just turned 20 years or 229. And I went through renal failure, coma, dialysis, until 2015 when I first got interstitial lung disease. And the broad part of everybody else is that, I was an amateur athlete, I think professional, and then all of a sudden I turned 40, as I call it, the woods, the 2x4, and smacked between the eyes with it. And what we, everybody that asks for, whether they want to, believe it or not, in denial, is that we all go through some form of anxiety and some form of depression. When I had just systemic, I was fine with it until I got interstitial lung disease, because then I was an angel. My whole life, quality of life has changed, where I can't play hockey anymore, I can't take my bike out and do 30-mile rides like I used to. You're running around with this and nothing. And so what you need to do is you really need to reinvent yourself. You've heard that expression. And find that purpose. And maybe this is from my corporate background, but every day I have a project. It could be as simple as cleaning out the junk drawer, but I have a project. And that project gives us purpose, which we were talking about earlier. And without purpose, whether you have this disease or not, even if you're married, if you don't have purpose, then why live? You know what I mean? So purpose gives us, especially us women in this career, the purpose gives us that reason to get up and fight every damn day. And we do fight every damn day. It's Ron's point. People were here to say, dude, you look great. Yeah, but you see what's going on the inside of the car. And I hear that all the time from people, and now I'm just kind of off a joke. But it's to redefine who we are. And I really feel like God gave me this for a reason. And I'm an advocate. Work hard at all, make great friends like Ron, Mike, and Lee. And this has been, this Scleroderma community without this community, I think many of us would be lost. It's really important that we have such a great support group. Your families have got to be a great support group, but it's that keeping that purpose every single day. And I follow this guy on Facebook for all this camping and traveling, and I'm like, man, that's so great. He's having a great time, but that's his purpose. And each one of us need to find that purpose at the same time.
And I don't know if everybody was able to hear that online. That's Andrew Baudieri, who also wrote a Celebration of Life, wonderful book, highly recommend it. Also, there's some presentations online somewhere, I'm sure, because I've seen them and I've played them for people before. And actually one thing that you brought up that I will remind people that there's no minimum safe distance with this disease. There's sometimes people will say, well, once you get past 5 years, you're good. That's not the case, because as people are living longer, you don't know. And in Andrew's case, ILD was not on the radar, because that happened well beyond that time frame. So you have to always remain vigilant, but you need a purpose. You need, whatever it is, small projects, you need to do that. And I can't emphasize enough to actually get his book. I have it. So, but I highly recommend that. Yes. Okay. Question is, can I talk more about my faith and prayer life and how that impacted my journey? My faith, very important. And actually I will, I've always had faith. And sometimes when you're dealing, and I know everybody's a little different, but when you're dealing with something that's a difficult diagnosis, and I'm going to guess for not everybody, but a lot of us, that difficult diagnosis came about as a result of a lot of stress. Most times people were dealing with a tremendous amount of stress or long-term chronic stress that led to suddenly the diagnosis. For me, I know there are a lot of times I will get on my knees and pray. I've got my bed, I can actually get up easier, and I've got a cushioned floor there, so it's not so hard on my knees. But when you're dealing with anything difficult, you stop, you pray. That's what I do. I believe in God, and there again, everybody, what you believe in, that's up to you. But for me, it's been very important. And when you start looking and saying, okay, there's a purpose for this, there's a reason that things happen the way they do. Even though, it would be great if I could say, you'll never deal with any adversity in life. I mean, on the one hand, you'd think that would be wonderful, but it's in the times of adversity that we rise to the challenge. We find out who we are. That's where our character and our fortitude come from. I mean, there are a lot of people that, if they got this diagnosis, would be crushed. And, and that's one of the things, we refer to ourselves as warriors, because it's not an easy disease. It's not an easy road, but we navigate it, we travel it, we get there. And what I will say, and I think anybody, whether this is your first conference or your 20th conference, there are more wonderful people with scleroderma than I think any other disease. I have a hard time imagining that there couldn't be more wonderful people that have this horrible disease. And I think about all the people that I've met. I thank God for those opportunities. I pray that things go smoothly, but I also know none of us are promised tomorrow. And so, but to me, that's something that faith has gotten me through a lot of it. And I also know that as well as I'm doing today, which seems okay, but I've got my challenges. I know tomorrow might not be the same. I mean, none of us are promised that, oh yeah, it's going to be smooth sailing. No, it's not. But at the same time, that faith aspect is so important. Okay. And I'll throw one last thing out. When I, after getting diagnosed, I had a whole series of things that I dealt with, and divorce was one in the grand scheme of things, job change, all sorts of things, and a lot of depression because my entire life was radically altered. And when at one point, I stopped and I thought, okay, what do I do? I'm depressed. Do I kill myself or do I go on? And I thought, well, I don't want to kill myself. So that means I have to go on. And what I did, I sat down and I thought, okay, well, I felt I had been dead in some ways for such a long time because of all the stress. And I sat down and I wrote my own resurrection plan and steps that I felt I needed to do, whether it be doing things differently each day, to say, okay, I'm not going to do the same things that I did that aren't fruitful, and that's something that for each of you to figure out what your purpose, what you want to do is, and how you want to do it, and sit down, think about it, and write out what do you want your life to look like moving forward, and make those decisions, write it down, and then reflect on it, look at it again. Don't just write it down and put it in a drawer. Tack it up on the wall, on your refrigerator, and look at it again after you've done that. So, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. And you're all wonderful. Thank you.